here in Keynsham, and Friday morning here with Mark Shelford, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon and Somerset. Welcome, Mark, and thank you for inviting me to Keynsham on a day when I believe you out and about within the community.
Yes, and I try and do that on a Friday. I sort of set up the battle rhythm within the week of Monday to Wednesday being in office, Thursday visiting the wider police family, and then Friday visiting the community based on the 16 constituencies. I try and do one in the morning and then one in the afternoon.
It's a huge area that you have to cover, not quite the largest, but Avon and Somerset. I was visiting my brother down in Crewkerne, very near the southern coast, and he said to me, yeah, looking forward to seeing you in Somerset. I couldn't quite believe that there in Crewkerne he was actually still in Somerset.
Well, as I remind the Home Secretary, it is God's own county.
Well, there'll be some challenges from other PCCs on that, so let's move on from that. But you come from a military background, and immediately before becoming Police and Crime Commissioner, actually you were very actively on the Avon and Somerset Police and Crime Panel. Now, it's pretty clear what the experience of the Police and Crime Panel will help you on in the role of the PCC. But your military background, what, if anything, do you think of that military background will help you in the role as a Police and Crime Commissioner?
Well, it's been very interesting. I think the sort of wider understanding of uniformed force is important, understanding chain of command, setting strategic goals rather than tactical involvement. I think it's been helpful. Understanding large budgets, procurement processes, a lot of skill set to bring together, and there's the straightforward leadership piece as well.
And your time in the military took you all over the world, I believe. So
I was incredibly lucky. Her Majesty was very generous and sent me all over the place, from the jungles of Borneo, Australia, through the Middle East, and I worked extensively in the Middle East, not only as a soldier but also when I left and I set up in business. I worked there and had a great opportunity of meeting different communities and understanding them, sitting, being able to chat to them, and really getting a first-hand experience of how we're all the same. We all want our children to be safe, healthy, educated and happy, and it doesn't matter who you are, what creed, colour or language you speak, we're all the same.
And what I know that one of your election pledges related to diverse communities and the opportunity, even stronger than that, the essential need for there to be recognition of diversity within the force. What ways do you see the force, through your governance that you provide, improving on the way in which it engages with, represents better those diverse communities?
And it's it's an incredibly important subject, and it's one that we put a lot of effort into, and I want to invigorate what they're already doing, and I've asked that the special team that's been formed in order to try and do this to take risk about this, go to places they haven't been before, talk to people they haven't talked to before, and engage all sorts of different parts of the community. And within that, I often get into trouble with this, but in the military we very much realised that you needed to target the parents and the mothers particularly, in order to persuade them that it was a really good career for their children. It was a safe career. It allowed them to get skills and training and then be able to expand afterwards in second and third careers. Well, I want to do the same in the police force, and police force is fantastically varied. The wider police family offers so much training. You could be a lawyer, an accountant, you could do all of the exciting in-uniform stuff. You could be a diver, ride a horse, whatever it might be. And I want to persuade those parts of the community that perhaps have been reluctant previously, that really is a good job to have and it's worth investing in.
There are significant opportunities at the moment, of course, with the pledge for 20,000 additional officers that the government nationally has made. Avon and Somerset along with other forces, will be looking to increase officer numbers at the moment, and so presumably there is work going on that's looking to actively encourage a greater proportion of those from the diverse communities from applying for that.
Yes, and that's part of the big programme that we're pushing out, and that's what I said about taking risk. It's about getting out and making the process easier to do as well. So, for example, if the questionnaire, the online questionnaire that people have to complete before they apply, is clunky and difficult, we need to make that smoother and easier. And also, there may be people who struggle with writing. I'm famously dyslexic, so I'm actually hopeless at writing big papers, and I like bullet points and short things, and I'm very good at graphs, very good at maths. I can count to 20 without taking my shoes and socks off. But the point of that is we need to make it easy for everybody to be part of that.
So would you have struggled, do you suppose, with your self-acknowledged dyslexia from successfully applying for to be a police officer in Avon and Somerset? Then would there have been something about the application process?
I think at 18 probably I would have done. I mean, I did go to university. I've got 2 degrees. The army was very good and helped to tolerated my dyslexia and helped train me, and I'm much better now than I was when I was 18. But I had some pretty ropey O-levels and A-levels at 18. But the application to be a police officer is so much more than just academics. It's much more about life skills, about leadership, it's about presence, it's about understanding, it's about having those hairs on the back of your neck that are radar, that you can pick up things. So it's wider than that. Of course you need to be able to have a mind that can be trained and disciplined, of course, and that's what education gives you, but specifically be able to spell really unkind words in the English language, which is brought
and there
together.
are many.
Yes, and in which language apart from English do you have 3 sets of spelling for 2? You know, how unkind is that?
I know,
particularly for foreigners.
As opposed to Spanish, where it's
or indeed Arabic, where you've got fantastic words. You have one of the lovely words that I used to use a lot was shwe shwe, which means many different things, but it means quietly, slowly, gently. Covers a whole raft of phrases depending on how you use it and when you use it.
So shwe shwe may actually feature in some of the police and crime plans that Avon and Somerset.
Well, and I certainly, when I speak to some of the communities, and occasionally I do deploy Arabic when I can remember the right phrases and words, because I used to teach in the Middle East. It's very helpful actually, and it's like anything. If you're talking to people from different countries and languages, if you can just deploy a few words to get them to feel that you're bothering and you're really caring about what you're talking about and who you're talking to, I think that's important.
I'd like to come back to one of the other things you mentioned in talking about recruitment and diversity, and that is taking risks.
Yes.
Now, police forces, perhaps understandably, aren't really used to taking risks very much. They are, in my experience, small c conservative, cautious. That there is something of a cliche that police projects are doomed to succeed. In other words, they're not pushing the boundaries a great deal, and so there is a presumption that they're going to be successful. So are you encouraging, it sounds like you are, you're encouraging more risk taking?
I am definitely encouraging creativity. I want people to think out of the box, to give something a go that perhaps they haven't done before. Risk is not about just doing something without thinking about it. You need to have contingency plans worked in and around it. But I do think people are successful who take risk. Organisations are successful that take risk. And I think there's a lot to be said for looking at the way we do business and taking risk. For example, one of the systems that we use is an organisation called Niche. It's a computer app that a lot of police forces use. We're but one of them. It's quite clunky, and it takes officers a long time to complete post-patrol reports. Well, I would very much like to get, I think it's produced by a Canadian company, I'd very much like to get their software engineers down to go and take part in a number of patrols, some ride-alongs, which are active, and then get them to fill the forms in and to see how clunky it is and how much time, and how they, because they're computer experts and programmers, can try and improve that, can try and make it easier for frontline officers. And I want all, I've set up a committee with the Chief Constable to continuously drive down administration that the frontline officers of the wider police family have to complete, so they can spend more time out and about engaging with communities, which is where I really want them to be.
One of the responsibilities, if not the key responsibility, that you, along with your OPCC team, have is the recruitment of a new Chief Constable. And so the former Chief Constable is now, we understand, heading to the College of Policing to become their new Chief Executive, I think mid-September. And you have an acting Chief Constable, but you haven't yet formally recruited, nor indeed advertised, for a new Chief Constable. You've talked about taking risk. Are you going to take risk in employment of or the search for a new Chief Constable?
Well, I wouldn't see it as risk, but I am going to open it to the widest possible power, and I'm going to, I've said that I'll take a rank down.
So rather than, apologies, but for those who are watching from abroad, so recruiting a Chief Constable, the next rank down is typically a Deputy Chief Constable, from whom Chief Constables would most typically be recruited. But you're going down to the next rank down, which is the Assistant Chief Constable level, and encouraging applications from that ACC pool. Absolutely.
But I don't see that as a risk. I just see that as opening to people with great talent and ambitions, and I want to get for the people of Avon and Somerset the best possible Chief Constable in place that we can get, and we've got so much to offer. It's a fantastic force, it's very wide, it's really interesting. You have the difference of the communities between Bristol and rural Exmoor, and you have to encompass that in the whole plan, and that's absolutely something that I want to try and achieve. And the widest possible gene pool, in fact, includes the Chief of Police from Virginia Beach, which I noticed when I was looking through the College of Policing instructions about foreign police forces that could apply for it. I noticed that where I'd been based in NATO in America, the local police chief would qualify as somebody who could take part in the competition.
Well, indeed, a few years ago, the then Home Secretary, who I think was Theresa May, sought to recruit a new Metropolitan Police Commissioner and encouraged applications from overseas. I don't think there were any applications from overseas, but whilst you're not discouraging applications from overseas, actually you're focusing on the United Kingdom.
No, I am,
the Assistant Chief Constable, Deputy Chief Constable, maybe even a serving Chief Constable in a force that where he or she wishes to move to, Avon and Somerset, a sizable force.
Well, why not? It is God's own county. So why would you not wish to be either in Somerset or in lovely southern Gloucestershire, or indeed in the metropolitan cities of Bristol and the town, of course, of Bath? It is not a city, it doesn't have a cathedral. We know that, and that's where Wells is, and that's clearly the seat of the bishop.
Well, it is a beautiful part of the world, Avon and Somerset, as I know from these last several months walking the country. Staying last night, for example, in Montpellier, in Bristol, which is very much a cosmopolitan,
yes,
thriving, exciting place to be, and with policing challenges. Bristol has a reputation for demonstrations, as illustrated by the toppling of I think the Colston statue into the Bristol dock as protest against the the use of the name of a former, I think I'm right in saying, slaves trader. It's an exciting place to be in policing terms, and a beautiful place as well.
It is, and of course I simply don't agree with the public taking the law into their own arm, and I was very strong about that. And that was prior to the election when I was a candidate. We could debate that for hours, but the point is that the point you made is that it's an eclectic mix of different people, which is exciting, and as my nephew says, it's very edgy in Bristol, and it's not in Bath.
Quite some variations across the full force area. Now, one of your national responsibilities for the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, so the APCC, you are the lead on economic and cybercrime, which includes fraud. Now, online fraud is an area that is growing enormously quickly, and where it's certainly fair to say, I'm sure it's fair to say, that the current approach, in the UK, the action fraud approach that is overseen by the City of London Police, demonstrably isn't working as it might and should. And indeed, the Home Office has recognised that there will need to be change. As the lead for the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, with PCCs providing the governance for policing locally, what do you see as being your national determination on this? What do you hope and wish to provide as the national lead for this?
Well, first of all, you're completely right. At the moment, it's doubling every year, crime, and it was mentioned on the doorstep regularly with people from Avon and Somerset about their concerns, and also about the perceived lack of activity from policing across the spectrum. So we are significantly investing in our own organic capability within Avon and Somerset. And again, I want to be creative and perhaps recruit specials who are perhaps forensic accountants, cyber experts within that. We have a regional capability, and there is also the national capability. But to answer your question specifically, I want to be very clear nationally the process and what we are trying to achieve. So I want to make the public more resistant and resilient to cybercrime. And I'm looking particularly at those vulnerable ages of the young who are perhaps getting into cyber through games online, and then suddenly find that they have committed a credit card to a game, and then that's being exploited and taken. And the slightly more mature age of perhaps my age, and the slightly older who are not so familiar with cyber. But it can happen to any age. In fact, my niece's husband recently came home to a message on the internet saying, you hadn't paid your gas bill, please would you pay. That it looked like the gas bill, everything was correct. It looked at first sight. So he put in the lines of his card, pressed the go button, and it went. And then the next day, he suddenly realised that his entire account had been emptied. And he's a very bright, has a very good job in London. He was tired, he came home, and this just happened. So it just shows it can happen to everybody.
Easily done. It's so easily done. Some very credible, I think they're called phishing activities out there.
So we all need to be on guard about this. But what I want nationally is to make people resilient and resistant to this crime. That's the first instance. Secondly, I want our detection capability to be able to chase these people down in a much more effective way than they currently are, and giving reports back to the people who have been victims of the crime, where the police have got to in those investigations, and also internationally working with our allies, so that if these particularly cyber crimes are originating from a country offshore from Britain, we don't not go after them. I want, working with the Foreign Office and other organisations that perhaps I worked with in my previous existence, to go chase these people so that nowhere is safe. So the message goes out, you don't mess with people in the UK. This is not the place you're going to go. we're going to make ourselves much more resilient and resistant, and if you do mess with us, we're coming after you.
So your responsibility here for economic and cyber, which is very much an international area of activity, belies your being elected as the Avon and Somerset Police and Crime Commissioner. So you have both a global or an international element of focus, and you have a very local element of focus here in Keynsham, talking today with concerns that may well relate to noise or to burglary or to very, very local activity. I'd just like to tie this back then to your recruitment now of a Chief Constable, because as do you, a Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset has some very local responsibilities and some national, even international ones, with the impact of things like fraud and online crime. So what sort of person do you think that you're looking for in that Chief Constable? He or she needs to be, in many ways, sort of multi-skilled, multi-talented. But
yes, and all Chief Constables are, of course they are. And I just want to come back to the point that you raised before, just to be quite clear. My focus is absolutely local within Avon and Somerset. I have an additional task which may be international as well as national, but my main effort and aim is all around Avon and Somerset. But so, and as will the Chief Constable, and they're likely to have national tasks as well. But the Chief Constable, above all, is to exude leadership qualities, and to sweat the Pelian principles from every pore of his body. I want prevention to be number one on their list of priorities. I'm not talking about a specific crime, rural crime, though it's very important and it's one of my priorities. I want prevention of all crime to be where they put their effort, because and that's what the great Sir Robert Peel said right at the beginning. If you can prevent crime, you then don't have to run around and deprive people of their livelihoods and lock them up. And that's where, people would be far happier to not be burgled than to be burgled and the police to catch the people afterwards and return their goods.
So preventing the crime rather than...
And that is simply the priority. But they've got to be a leader, and they've got to be able to bring the force together and drive them over the hill of prevention.
So for those Assistant Chief Constables, Deputy Chief Constables, even Chief Constables out there that are thinking about whether they should put in their application for the Chief Constable vacancy here, what would you say to them that is going to encourage applications from the people that you would wish to be applying? What makes, if I'm that potential candidate, what is your message to them that is going to encourage them to submit that application?
Well, Avon and Somerset is a fantastic force. It is incredibly diverse. It has great capability across a wide spectrum. It is as somebody who is the commanding officer of that force, I could not wish for a better force to command, and I'd be amazed if I had hundreds of people who wanted to take that opportunity. Okay. Not least because the area is also fantastic as well. But
so in terms of skills, in terms of their knowledge, it's not that you are specifically looking for somebody with a long history in CID or a long history in public order or a long history in online crime. You are agnostic on that. You are keen to have those applications. It's the leadership qualities.
It is. I expect everybody who applies to be very good at all their professional policing skills. Otherwise they wouldn't have got to an Assistant Chief Constable, they wouldn't have done the staff colleges, etc. to qualify. So I take that as the start line. Above and beyond that is how good a leader they are, and whether they agree with me about Pelian principles and prevention.
So you have your community day ahead of you. We're rapidly approaching the point where you need to be heading off on other duties, other responsibilities. Before we close this conversation, though, it is a tradition of mine now on the Policing Friendship Tour interviews and discussions that I've been holding, to ask the person I'm speaking to about their charity, their favourite charity or charities. Mark, do you have a particular charity that is dear to your heart that you would like to?
I'm going to be very cheeky and try and take two. The first is Royal British Legion, for obvious reasons, and the second is police officers injured in the line of duty. And both of those I am supporting during my tenure as the PCC.
So Royal British Legion, but through your military background and service, and the care of the second group relating to your policing activities. Okay, Mark, thank you so much for your time. It is beautiful surroundings here in the park in Keynsham. The weather is a little cooler than it has been in the past, but that's not unwelcome, and at least no rain, so you'll have no rain, I hope, for your activities during the day. Mark Shelford, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.